we all considered ourselves American. Never doubted that we were American. And I was told that I was reclassified as an enemy alien.
On a Sunday morning in December 1941, 17-year-old Daniel Inouye was getting ready for church, listening to the radio when the Honolulu DJ began to shout. I stepped out onto the street, he remembered, and sure enough, there were puffs of smoke coming out of Pearl Harbor. I knew what was happening, and I thought my world had just come to an end. Throughout the raid, Japanese pilots flew so low they could make eye contact with people on the ground. In many cases, the faces they saw looked like those back home. In 1941, 40% of Hawaii residents were of Japanese descent. And as the day unfolded, they reacted with the same shock, the same outrage, and the same courage as their fellow Americans. One Japanese-American soldier summed up the feeling of many, saying he felt deep anguish and despair because the land I'd been taught to honor by my parents had committed an act of war against the country I loved. In the wake of Pearl Harbor, as shock turned to fury, Japanese Americans found themselves targets of their countrymen's outrage. In early 1942, Japanese Americans of draft age were designated as 4C, enemy aliens. In February, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, laying the groundwork for relocation of more than 120,000 men, women, and children from their homes in the American West to be held in internment camps. Still, a great many wished to serve. In Hawaii, 1,300 Japanese Americans of the National Guard were permitted to remain on duty. Shipped to the mainland for training, the men were organized into the 100th Infantry Battalion. In September 1943, they landed in Italy. At Monte Cassino, they braved landmines, barbed wire, and fire from above. Taking heavy casualties, they earned a nickname, the Purple Heart Battalion. And among the Germans, they earned another, Little Iron Men. Meanwhile, a new volunteer unit had been formed, the 442nd. Its members recruited from across the country, including from inside internment camps, where the recruits' families continued to be held. In June 1944, the battle-tested 100th Battalion was attached to the newly arrived 442nd in Tuscany. The Green troops would quickly learn the pain of war. On July 7th, attacking a key German position, Private Calvin Saito fell. His brother, George Saito, also serving with the 442, wrote home to their father, "Dear Dad, I believe the War Department has notified you of our loss of Calvin. In spite of Cal's supreme sacrifice, don't let anyone tell you that he was foolish or made a mistake to volunteer. Of what I've seen on our mission, I am more than convinced that we've done the right thing in spite of what's happened in the past. America is a damned good country, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Chin up, Dad. Your loving son, George." George Saito would also be killed in combat, October 17, 1944. Fall 1944. Now in France, the 442nd joined the campaign in the Vosges Mountains, the last barrier before Germany. Amid the fog and snow, a unit from Texas, the 141st Regiment, was surrounded. To relieve them, the 442 was ordered to charge an entrenched German position on the hillside above. Trees splintered, and men fell from the overwhelming fire. Yet they pressed on, breaking the German lines, relieving the surrounded troops. The rescue of the 211 Texans came at the cost of nearly 350 men of the 442nd. Word of the mission spread, and the 442nd was ordered to stand review to be recognized for their valor. Of the 400 men assigned, only 18 surviving members of K Company and 8 of I Company turned out. When the commanding general admonished the low attendance, the 442nd's leader, his voice wavering, replied, "General, this is all I have left." By the end of the war, the 442nd had become the most decorated unit of its size in American history, earning 8 Presidential Unit citations and more than 4,000 Purple Hearts. Still, full recognition would not come for decades. 55 years after the war, in June of 2000, 20 men of the 442nd were awarded the military's highest decoration, the Medal of Honor. Among them was Senator Daniel Inouye, who joined up after watching the attacks on Pearl Harbor and would lose an arm leading a mission in Italy. Shortly before his death in 2012, he was asked about his experience and the experience of the 120,000 Japanese Americans interned. After the war, the United States of America was strong enough to admit wrong, he said. Very few countries would do this, and for that, I'm very proud of my country.
Over the radio that Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And when I went to the recruiting station, I was turned down, and I was told that I was reclassified as an enemy alien.
In February of 1942, they put us into internment camp. Well, I wasn't too happy. I'm an American, and I didn't bomb Pearl Harbor.
We all considered ourselves American, never doubted that we were American.
I was in 2 years, and then they came up with a loyalty questionnaire, and I answered that I would fight for the U.S.
War is war, okay? The 442, when we first went in, nobody knew what's going to happen, right?
Every ethnic group that came to America had to prove their loyalty by shedding their blood.
We were able to accomplish what they wanted.
I'm just glad that I was able to serve and got to come back alive.
I always tell people I'm one of the luckiest guy. I went to war. I came back without a scratch. A lot of my friends never made it back.